The mood in Parliament was already charged. There were rumors, nervous glances, and an unspoken nervous tension in the air, but no one could imagine what was to follow. In a melodramatic and emotional piece of theatre that few would have been able to write, Deputy President Paul Mashatile was instructed to leave his seat in Parliament. The incident was captured live on television and South Africa watched in shock as one of the ANC's strongest players cracked under pressure. It wasn't an ousting that was done with dignity or decorum. No, the atmosphere was marred by muttering of betrayal. Betrayal that rang through the corridors of power. Poor Mashatile, a man who had long been assumed to be invincible, stood in utter silence before tears started welling up in his eyes, his voice breaking as he attempted to speak back to the motion that ousted him from office. The house was quiet, but the sound outside its walls had already started growing loud. Mashatile's ousting was not merely a punishment. It was the fall of years of political gamesmanship, the undoing of a man who had been set to lead South Africa's government. At one point, he had been positioned by many as a unifying force in the ANC, a fence-sitter between fighting camps and even as a possible replacement for President Cyril Ramaphosa. But all those hopes were left in smouldering ashes. For years, Mashatile had been treading water. He preached oneness but was the focal point of factional fights all the time. Some regarded him as a pragmatic politician with the ability to mend rifts in the ANC. Others murmured that his aspirations extended far beyond where he sat now that he set his sights firmly on the presidency. But all of that came crashing down in one magnificent parliamentary confrontation. So what caused this dubbing? Insiders say increasing pressure over corruption charges, intra-factional fights, and discontent with Mashatile's management of policy and party conflicts had been simmering. They attacked him as indecisive at critical times for not disciplining allies caught in scandal and for silently undermining President Ramaphosa. Others have even gone so far as to say that this action was orchestrated by Ramaphosa loyalists bent on eliminating any perceived threat to the presidency. If that's the case, then this was not just a dismissal. It was a broad daylight political assassination. The unprecedented action sent a shudder through the ANC. Already wounded by corruption scandals, disintegrating support, and internal chaos, the party now sat and witnessed one of its most experienced leaders self-destruct in real time. Analysts define the scene as much an emotional event as a historic one. A public crack in the once powerful wall of ANC dominance. For regular South Africans viewing it, the sight of Mashatile dabbing at his tears was emblematic of something greater. A party devouring itself alive. Mashatile's allies, especially those who suspect Ramaphosa's close circle, are already mobilizing for a backlash. Hours after his ouster, rumors of a counterattack started. Some are demanding an emergency national conference to re-examine leadership. Others are tossing around the threat of court action over the process. And in secret meetings, ANC elders are outraged, calling the drama humiliating for both Mashatile and the party as an institution. While this was going on, the opposition parties did not hesitate to capitalize on the theatrics. The Democratic Alliance released an angry statement accusing the ANC of employing Parliament as a factional purging weapon. The economic freedom fighter stated that this was merely the start of a long overdue settling of scores, asserting that the ANC was now crumbling under its own corruption and hypocrisy. To the opposition, Mashatile's downfall is blood in the water. But the question on everyone's mind is this the beginning of the end of poor Mashatile's political life? People around him claimed he was taken by surprise. He was certain that even with the increasing rebellion, he had enough numbers to weather the storm. But the tables turned overnight and perhaps facilitated by those closest to Ramaphosa. Mashatile is now reportedly in emergency talks with his supporters considering his options. Speculation is running wild. Some believe he might resign from the ANC altogether and launch a blistering public expose of the party's inner workings. Others argue he could attempt a comeback by aligning with rival factions, perhaps even those loyal to Jacob Zuma, or by forming an entirely new political movement. If South African politics has taught us anything, it's that no political death is ever final. But what Mashatile does next will tell us if it's a personal failure or the catalyst for a broader uprising in the ruling party. When Mashatile lost his footing in parliament, everyone looked to President Sir Ramaphosa and then did nothing. Nothing at all. No word, no statement, just silence. Silence that communicated volumes to many. It was whispered victory. Mashatile had been a thorn in his side for months. Criticizing policy in secret, consolidating factional power, and maybe even preparing to challenge the president's authority. With Marshal's dramatic ousting, Ramaphosa seemed to gain more power than he's wielded in years. But political triumphs often have steep costs. Ramaphosa is now under fire from ANC veterans, regional leaders, and grassroots members who viewed Mashatile as a reformer and potential savior. By purging him in such a violent fashion, Ramaphosa stands the risk of alienating whole blocks of support. Something that this purge will widen splits in the party and strengthen the ANC's weak position in the run-up to the next election. Will this consolidate Ramaphosa's hold or further isolate him? That is the question growing larger by the day. What is certain is that more revelations will be coming. Experts say resignations might be in the cards as Mashatile's allies will not be able to keep quiet over the embarrassment. The battle within Latuli House is not anywhere near being resolved and the cracks are deepening by the minute. What South Africa saw in Parliament was not only the fall of a deputy president, but the public disintegration of a crisis-ridden ruling party. For common people, the drama has a sour flavor. Most wonder if all these endless battles for power have weakened the ANC beyond being able to rule. Citizens are suffering with rising prices, dilapidated infrastructure, and joblessness. But Parliament is taken up with faction fights. To some, the tears of Mashatile captured the wider despair of a country seeing its leaders self-destruct. Thus, the scene is set for a turbulent period in South African history. Will Mashatile become a forgotten man or emerge as a rallying point once more for the disenchanted? Will Ramaphosa's silent triumph endure or will it collapse under the forces of grassroots revolt? The outcome is uncertain, but one reality is certain. The ANC is plummeting towards free fall and its former unmoving grip on power is now being challenged more than ever before. Stay tuned. The storm has just started.